Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 460 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Olexiy Arestovych, Lieutenant Colonel, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, blogger, Mark Feygin. Thank you for your continuous support, guys. Here is day 460. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. Today is Monday, 29th of May, time is 11 p.m. in Kiev, same time in Moscow. We're doing a regular stream, day 460. Olexiy, glad to see you. Yeah, I'm just thinking that very soon it'll be day 500. Right, 40 days is not even too far away from now. A month and a half and we'll be there. We have already 36,000 starting with us today. 16,000 click the like button. We are starting later than normal today, and I understand many people are missing the live stream. And for those who did miss it, you sharing links is important. That pops on their radar, brings them back to watch the stream. So that is an important thing, to click that like button, to share if you can, if your circumstances allow, and to subscribe to Olexiy Arestovych channel, to Feygin Live, and of course to Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. And let's start. You've seen that double combination shelling attack on Kiev with drones, with some ballistic missiles, and so far, according to the official data, not a single missile reached the target. Everything was shot down, despite that there are some consequences, and you've seen some videos with children running home. They keep missing the targets. They keep not being able to reach it, but they continue shooting up Kiev, even though Patriot shoots them down. What's the logic? Mark, it's the continuation of our yesterday's story. We talked about that. Their idea is to keep us tired, to keep us upset with all that. They're trying to form the public opinion against the war, so that society would request their leadership to stop this war, to cease fighting, to surrender. Because even when our air defense system destroys everything, it doesn't add any joy to anyone's life, because it's huge explosions above your head. So their target is to keep pressure on the public opinion, to escalate this pressure, to keep it up, to hope that our nation will post a new request to our leadership to cease fighting. This is a wrong calculation, but still. And also, they do have another target of trying to destroy our defense systems, or possibly make us use as many missiles as we can for the counteroffensive action, because otherwise we'll be using everything that we used here to cover our front. And also they want to keep our air defense systems in the cities, so we would not be able to just take them off and bring most of them to the front to aid more protection, to give more protection to the troops. Plus, of course, they do want to and hope to maybe shoot down, to maybe blow up one RST, one Patriot or something. And of course, they also do have legit targets that they are trying to hit. Missing, inaccurate, but still they're trying. So it's a complex action, and it has a complex set of goals, which are plentiful, and we counted most of them right now. All right, I get it. Yeah, that definitely has logic in it. This is one way or another connected to counteroffensive. In at least 2 points that we mentioned, yes. All right, we have more people joining us. Please do not forget to click the like button and share a link if you can. That brings more eyeballs to our streams. Well, okay, Olexiy, another thing. Ukraine President Zelensky and more public officials make statements that everything is ready, that we got everything we need for it, so just sit tight and wait. And media is asking me as well that same question. So it looks like there is some trolling, the continuous pressure onto Russian troops, kind of a payback psychological operation of, yeah, the counteroffensive is starting soon. Run, idiots. Your stuff here will be FUBAR, so you just have a little more time, a few more days to leave the territory. So, how do you answer the questions that we keep getting more and more from media that everything is taking a bit longer, that it is not on time? What do you mean, Mark, by taking longer, not happening on time? Because that's a curious question. If, for example, we had an Olympic Games starting on the 15th and it's already 20th and nothing's happening, then yes, it's taking longer or running late. We have not declared an official date, so it's only the expectation and the tentative waiting time or expected waiting time that takes longer. And our military leadership is not going to conform with anybody's expectation. I actually, when we were starting that, was afraid that our leadership will not be able to hold that line and hold that position, but they are successfully doing it. And here we have the public opinion and public in large waiting for this event, while Ministry of Defense and our leadership of defense is doing their own business. And, it was even Speer, I think, who mentioned in his memoirs that he was amazed by the frivolous treatment of their people that democracies are doing, that certain filtration camps in Britain, making people donate gold, making people behave in certain ways, work 3 shifts, putting some of the Japanese citizens in internment camps in the United States, and similar actions in Britain, economically and politically. And he was amazed that their opponents could do that when Hitler, on the other hand, could not afford himself to do it. So he could do all the barbaric and other emotions, but he was not free to behave like that with his society, because a dictator really depends upon the support of the crowd. While he can do anything he wants with individual, he cannot really do that with the crowd and public opinion. While strong leaders of the free world actually afforded themselves more freedoms with it. And remember, at the beginning of this war, there were a lot of screams about clowns in Ukraine, about FSB against Comedy Club. And here is FSB against Comedy Club. So how long is the public now waiting for the counteroffensive? We are doing and following our military need. We're not following any opinion. And okay, Olexiy, I see your point. I'll add a little note here that dictatorship is significantly touchy, especially when they're not achieving their goals, when they're losing. That's when they have to really care about the general opinion in their country. Of course, Mark, war is a political process and it has political consequences. Our leadership even restrains itself politically, giving more freedom for military. Because if we were paying more attention to politics instead, we would have started sooner. But one can see that military is definitely toting their line, and they're doing it just paying attention to military necessity and the logic of operation, and this is great for our side. I'll just quote here President Zelensky. He said a little less than an hour ago, the time frame of motion of our troops are already confirmed. Thank you for the brigades that were taking part in all the preparatory activity. So this is a final statement, right? After that, you can continue smiling and saying that, we have the dates, we're just not disclosing them yet. Everything is according to the plan, and you guys keep being nervous and running around. So he can stick that screwdriver into the occupant's liver and keep it there for a while. Yeah, I can also quote a classic here, Mark, that nobody can expect how much men like trolling each other, and you can see it's not just a women's activity. So you can see by the actions of our aviation, by our artillery, and by missile hits deep enough, like Verdansk, Melitopol, Lugansk, Mariupol, we would not be carrying out all these operations unless certain actions are to follow. I actually want to bring a quote here from Jean Anot with Patrick Devers, who suicided himself later. A movie was about the, I think it was called Headbutt or Head Strike, and it's a comedy. I watched it probably 5 times when I was a kid. So a guy, a football player, gets arrested, and he goes to jail, and they let him out for just to play a finale because the team is losing without him, and he basically goes out for a couple hours to win the game, and then he starts, because he was just let out to play the game, and he starts trolling and taking revenge on those who put him in jail. And you know how he's doing it? He's doing it by doing nothing. He walks by a certain vehicle that he promised to destroy. He doesn't do anything with the wife of another that he promised to do. He walks by the property of a third. So he's basically taking revenge by them being trolled heavily, and they're all anxious and watching him. So another topic I wanted to bring is the statement made by Prigozhin. They had a date of 10th of June that he's eager to withdraw his troops by the 10th of June. And even Syrsky, the Ukrainian side, is confirming that, yeah, Prigozhin confirmed that he would be willing to leave Bakhmut by 10th, but nothing is happening. He hasn't relinquished his control yet. There's no motion in accordance with his statement. In the meantime, the risk to surround Bakhmut, to be surrounded there, is increasing, and Ukraine is strengthening the flanks around it. So all that is being counterimposed over the version that Prigozhin is, first of all, in good connection with Yuri Kovalchuk, with first vice head of the administration in charge of inner politics, Yuri Kirienko. So they have a certain strategy against Shoigu and Gerasimov, against Russian military. And the mouth of that agreement is Prigozhin, who is still alive just because of his connection to Kovalchuk and to Kirienko. And that they're generally getting ready to surrender Bakhmut, that they will be leaving early June, and nobody will actually come and defend it as effectively as they want to say Wagner did. And so that they can point fingers at generals and say, yeah, these idiots lost everything, not us. Mark, conspirology is a great thing, it just needs more facts, right? The facts are as follows. A small part of Wagner was withdrawn. A small part, not too battle-worthy. A lot of them are still there, so not too much activity is happening in that front. And we already saw his withdrawal when? On the 10th of May at midnight that he announced before. Didn't happen. Soon, same date is happening in June, and he is still there, so I'm taking it with a grain of salt, all these statements. We'll see. Also, if our troops are going to surround Bakhmut, this will be not a Pierce victory, as you mentioned. It will be a typical Stalingrad victory, and they will be playing the part of Germans in that case. We'll see what's going to happen. Syrsky made an interesting statement saying that very soon there'll be a big offensive, and we'll see how the front will change. So there is an intrigue there, definitely. But for now, our troops are fighting for the flanks. It's not so simple as it seems. The fact that they managed to stop and move the enemy, just that deserves a very high grade from a military standpoint and from human standpoint as well. So here, let me start the poll for today. Will Ukrainian military use the moment when Wagner will leave Bakhmut to capture the area. Yes, no, or it doesn't matter. Just let's take a measure of how our viewers see that matter. And it seems that on this part of the front, Wagner was the only battle-worthy group that could take Bakhmut and try to defend it. And yeah, I'm thinking they're the only one in the whole army. They don't have anything similar right now capable of making any successes for them on the front. These are the guys who helped them take Lysychansk, Popasna, and Solidar. Everything that was taken mostly by Wagner. And we are showing the map now. You can follow it. There are no major changes, Mark. Since yesterday's conversation, nothing happened there. Main events are missile hits, artillery hits. There is some fighting on the ground, but there are localized engagements. Not that they are not intensive and not deserve attention, only in the way that the map is not changing. So there is nothing to really comment there. Ugledar, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Kremenная, Liman, and Belogorovka maybe. These are the hottest spots on the front line. So you think it doesn't look like a quiet time before a major operation? No, Mark, it's not quiet. It's pretty heavy localized fighting going on there. It just doesn't get reflected on the major map, but locally, yeah, it's pretty hot. Also, with Wagner, the story is the way I see it. That Prigozhin considers the threat of Bakhmut being surrounded as real. He mentioned that several times. So Wagner is leaving piecemeal, slower than is expected, but they still are withdrawing. And they're trying to give a chance to Russian troops to either save their face or to shit their pants completely. And Prigozhin is trying to save his people not because he is so kind and caring, but because this is a basis for his power. For Prigozhin, these troops are more interesting in Central African Republic and Mali than their adventures near Bakhmut. He is already made a few statements that this is not our business in Ukraine. He said that this is not our business here. We were called upon in the time of need, and what are we facing right now? So he created this song that he is singing now that will be leaving Bakhmut on the, remember, since the 10th of May, and he was screaming about lack of shells, lack of ammo, lack of support, and all this hysteria in the last 30 days from Prigozhin. All of these videos were because it is the core of his troops that are dying in Bakhmut now. He has lost easy access to new recruits, and he wants to save the core of his group for other operations and other theaters. He doesn't like to lose 10,000 in a month from the real core. The ones who fought with him in 3 wars in Africa and other places, the ones who know their business, who know how to fight, them he wants to save. He understands that the threat near Bakhmut is real, and he is trying to withdraw, even piecemeal, but he is trying to withdraw those people out. And he doesn't want to take responsibility, right, Olexiy, for that, for the failure? Not that, I think. I think he's even caring more about Wagner not being surrendered there. Because imagine they're surrounded by Ukrainian military and all of them die or get captured. He loses all of the might that he has. He loses everything he has. And they will not be able to participate in any international conflict or internal conflict if that happens. If he's alone and maybe, I don't know, a couple hundred fighters left with him, he is nothing. He is not worthy of mention. He has weight only when he has several dozen, tens of thousands with him. All right, we'll see how the poll will flow. About 10,000 of you already voted. Will Wagner use that opportunity to leave the city? Yeah, 40%. Most of you are saying now this is not an important reason, not an important question. Okay, so Budanov made a statement from the Kiev side saying that all those who tried to scare us, making sure that we sit tight and surrender, will see blowback. We'll see our return action and retaliation, and just wait. It appears that Budanov usually doesn't throw words out to the wind. After every statement that he makes, somebody gets a statuette that explodes, or somebody's car gets blown, or more propagandists die in weird ways. So, how do you think we should gauge that new statement from him? Do you think that more actions of a diversion character will continue from Ukraine special forces? Because why am I bringing this? There were several publications in the Western media that Ukrainian intel society, both special services and also military intel, are very professional, and they're very, I would say, reckless in a good way, that they're basically taking chances and being high professional, they succeed in unusual operations usually deemed for failure. So how far do you think it can go? I don't know. Assassinate Putin, maybe Prigozhin or somebody. You know, Mark, if it was so easy to assassinate Prigozhin and Putin, they would have been gone already. But thing is, we are crazy in a good way, but we're also very adequate. That means that we are engaging the enemy in accordance with the rules of European army that is waging war. So we're following the rules and traditions of military engagement. And of course, our operations are definitely risky, definitely unexpected in many occasions. And these guys definitely are angry at the enemy invading the country. So something will happen, regardless of that shelling, after which he made a statement. It will be continued until we reach our goals and objectives. And I remind, our goals are pretty straightforward. Not a single Putin soldier on our territory. And Russian military needs to withdraw, Russia needs to start paying reparations, and Putin needs to be deposed. And all our military and special services forces will be achieving these goals with vigor and zest, and we do have enough power to do that. And I can only say that, even Israeli intel community recently applauded us. You mean the official Israeli intel guys? Well, I would say people who had a lot of experience working for those. Yes, they are unofficially approached me on several occasions and said, with all our experience, we're watching you closely, and we are pleasantly amazed at the level of operations you guys pull through. Well, this is a high grade, I would say. High grade. Okay, let's see, Olexiy, what's going to happen. Let's buy some beer and popcorn and see how the operation will unfold. 160,000 are watching us. About 60,000 click the like button. Please make sure we get to 100,000 likes. Not too many today, right? I should play my usual I'll leave the frame if we don't get 100k. Okay, please continue clicking the button. Now, did you see another escalation in Kosovo? I would say kind of regular, the usual. How would you gauge that? Oh, there's already some fighting, somebody is wounded, somebody is hurt. So, Vucic's last statement sounds like this: Kosovo Spetsnaz shot one of the crowd of Serbian aggressors, and one of them is wounded. And Vucic turned to the West, requesting that the West pacify Kosovars. Also in the news that NATO peacemakers also suffered some wounds. They did not defend anyone, they just got hurt themselves. One would need to say, though, that Kosovo people are looking at Serbs in a similar way that we're looking at Russians. So it's a difficult and intertwined conflict, and it's a big question which side our sympathies with at the moment, right? So Serbia has a certain idea on the internal political market. Here we have the language topic, for example. You can always make political capital on there. They have Kosovo, which always gets your reaction. But the problem is when politicians start pulling the tiger by the whiskers, they get often a very poorly managed situation and unexpected blowbacks. So it seems like right now they pulled a little too hard and they got a stronger reaction than they wanted to. So escalations with these topics are always risky. They always put one in the position of a possible serious blowback. We discussed that several months ago. They had a similar situation, already a similar escalation. Yep, it was. It did happen. And here, Mark, it's another situation when Serbs decided not to go vote in Kosovo, those who live there, and then they start to protest the results of that election, which they don't like. It's quite illogical, right, if you don't partake. So it's an interesting political logic here. So you think it'll not grow into anything significant? No, that's not what I'm saying, Mark. I'm just saying that it's a situation very reminiscent of a sabotage by Serbs who live in Kosovo when Italian strike turns into active resistance and active protests, and that conflict, I'm actually saying, has a potential for danger. But the overall potential of that conflict is not too high, because Serbian troops will not fight in Kosovo. They can threaten, and maybe they can threaten to a degree that one of the Kosovo policemen or special services will shoot again in their direction. So there is a risk of new victims in this conflict, but I don't see a risk of a huge out-of-control conflict. All right, let's go further. There was a phone conversation recently between Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan, newly elected president of Turkey. Putin congratulated Erdogan on his new appointment and his new win, new election. He underlined the possibility of continuous work in a productive manner. And Erdogan accepted his thanks and confirmed that he is eager to continue joint work on all the actual matters of the day, and he's open for future contacts. So Putin called first. Americans haven't yet. And OCSE inspection also commented that elections were not too clean in Turkey. There were some notes, some drawbacks in them, despite Erdogan calling it the holiday of democracy. What would you say? Do you think anything may change still, the politics of Erdogan to Moscow? No, not exactly. But there is definitely one region where he scored only 28%, and police is now disbanding rioters with water cannons. So, but overall, even if somebody in Europe will not confirm the legitimacy of these elections, in Turkey they most likely will be affirmed. Yeah, they already did, right, Olexiy? Yeah, so he will be a president for the next 5 years, and my question would be, does he have enough health to be a leader of their nation for the next 5 years? Or you think there is a serious concern with his health? Well, we all saw that about a month ago when he was so bad that they nearly called his relatives to the hospital, right? So that's a risk. Okay, we have about 200,000 watching us, 76,000 of you clicked the like button. We've been live for about half an hour. I remind you that our usual poll is, will Ukrainian military use the withdrawal of Wagner troops from Bakhmut to capture the territory? 38% are saying that this is insignificant reason for that, and 20% 5% plus saying yes, they will. Another point. Ukrainian Congress voted to move the Victory Day celebration from the 9th of May to the 8th of May. And as far as I remember, it was a suggestion by Zelensky to proceed with this. So I see that as a continuous trend of disconnecting from Soviet Union, which celebrated everything on the 9th of May, towards the victory in the Second World War instead. So what do you think on that? Victory it's very simple actually, Mark. It was one of the systemic mythology elements of the Soviet Union, the victory in the Great Patriotic War versus the Second World War. In Putin's Russia as well, even though they have no ideology, they still just playing the same mythology. And most of them in Russia celebrated by inertia, but Putin himself is definitely appreciative of Stalin and his manner of leadership. And they got a potpourri, though. They have an icon of Nicholas the last Tsar, and then picture of Stalin. And it's a weird combination of things there and their holidays. And we're in Ukraine showing that we're not following that tune. We rather celebrate everything with Europe. When Germany signed the surrender and capitulation on the 8th of May. And for us, the symbol of this holiday is that red poppy flower. So it's more of a memorial day. It's more of a day of a memory of the fallen, versus the 9th of May, where in Russia it's mostly a celebration of victory and their victory over the enemy. And personally, Mark, I think there's another holiday that is more important for Ukraine. It's coming in about a month, the day of Christianing of Russia by Ukraine. I think this is more important for us. Why? Can you elaborate on that? I think the main issue is at hand is that Russia tried to steal the identity of Ukraine way back. And the problem is that they continued to try to live under that false identity, and we trying to gather ourselves after this event. And we should not be celebrating events anywhere in the recent 100 years in regards to our nation. I think we should look way back to Vladimir, the Christianer, the guy who Christianed Slavic people. I think it was 5th century, and going to tri-field times. And the history of Ukraine is basically a collection of disjointed mythology and historic events that are poorly connected yet. And one of my life tasks I see is to connect them all together in a single thread that would start back then and that would go further into the future. And this is the story, this is the history of people and land, and of course peoples that inhabit that land. Because if you go locally in a recent 100-year-old history, that doesn't have roots. And also, why give Moscow all the good cards? Because Russia in Greek is Rus. We are Rus. Russia was the Greek word used for the Moscow dukes to give them some legitimacy. So I see that we need to add to our Ukrainian ID an ID that says Rus as well, because Ukraine is Rus. And also the connection of 3 peoples of Rus, which is us, Lithuanian and Poles. That was a really strong country back in the several centuries ago. And this action, this mythology will give enough capital politically and historically to Ukraine that will basically nullify all the pretense of Moscow for ruling over Russian people. Because a city that is celebrating 700, 800 years cannot claim to have superiority over Kiev, who just celebrated 15, almost 1600 years. So our politicians are still shying away from that topic. I think that's weak. But President Zelensky did make a right step in the right direction, that Ukrainian Day of Ukraine is being transferred to the Day of Christianing of Russia. which I think is most important day, much more important than many other days that we could have picked. So if we continue to put pressure on that meta-historic operation and to that messaging, we will have a great platform for continuing our strategy. Because if you remember, Putin did explain his whole operation with meta-historic reasons. But I think, yeah, it's only two people who take this meta-history seriously. It's Putin and myself. So I very often bring this up, and when there is a reason, I bring this topic. Today, obviously, I am. And I'm saying that we need to rename ourselves Rus Ukraine because we are the inheritance of all the tradition. We need to kick that pedestal from under Moscow because kicking their mythology on the 9th of May of their victory in their Great Patriotic War instead of winning the Second World War, that's part of the myth. And the second part would be to kick that message that they are Rus, that they are Russia. They're not. They're a shard of the Golden Horde by Mongols, who were put in power by the Mongol Empire to rule all the Slavs that lived in the land. So they were illegitimate until then. And they know it. They actually know it. They know that part of the history. They, by the way, placed the monument to Vladimir in the center of Moscow. This is our Vladimir, by the way. If you read the inscriptions in some of the oldest churches in Russia and done in the 20th, in the 12th or 13th century, it's basically Ukrainian, because Ukrainian is closest to that original Russian language. Because you guys in Moscow, you're pretending to be Russians, then you might as well learn the real Russian language, or the whatever is closest to it right now, which is Ukrainian. But I understand this is a strategic, this is a tall goal, but sooner or later it will happen. The water grinds the stone, so we'll get there. And I'm just upset that very often we do half steps instead of making one beautiful step across the board. I'll tell you one more thing, Olexiy. In Moscow, they're now reviewing their values and they're trying to move further away from Vladimir the Christianer to Alexander Nevsky because he calls more historic connotations that are sympathetic to the current times. Because Nevsky was a patented representative of the horde, of the Golden Horde from Mongolia. And this is more matching to their current politics than the person who brought Christianity to the lands. So Nevsky is much closer to their current mythology than Vladimir the Christianer. They put Vlad there because, yeah, they're idiots. This is Vladimir, that is Vladimir. I don't think they strategize much. No, Mark, they actually did voice out the pretense to be older and ruler branch and to draw their roots over Kiev. And then when that failed, they tried to present themselves as the Ladaga culture, and that also didn't quite work. There was funny, some historians shared with me that they had a scientist from Cambodia who in one of the historic conferences destroyed that theory in an hour and a half so utterly that they had to not use it again. And now they're propping up Nevsky, who actually was a representative, as you mentioned, of the Horde, and who brought Mongols to the territory of Russia to try to suppress the uprising by his brother, instead of joining his brother in defeating the Mongols. So this is definitely Putin's story. That sounds very in tune with what he is doing. He is an archetypical traitor and Grey. So the task of the Greys is to destroy all the talented people in their own land, and the task of the traitor is to destroy the rulership and become the leader under some external management or whatever other power he can access. And Nevsky would have no chances to rule the lands without Horde, and that was his only chance to power, and that's what he did. He used the external force to rise to power, and that's exactly the type, to bring foreign forces to suppress his own brother instead of joining him. That's very Kremlin-like. Oh yeah, exactly. That's very Eastern direction that is in higher demand in Russia now to defend themselves from the damned West and the crusaders and to go along with the horde, right? Yep, that's an interesting reflection of history. Yep, very pretentious though. Okay, another piece of news we started discussing yesterday. We talked briefly about Lindsey Graham, the senator, and yeah, if you watch the protocol video, right, it's different from what they showed in Russia. It was not even a topic. They Indeed, there was a statement that Russians are dying on the battlefield, getting killed there, and in the second different part of the statement, he did talk about good investments in Ukraine. And today, Graham commented on the hysteria in Russia. He said that he's glad that Putin's propagandists are angry about his words about the deaths of Russians in Ukraine. So he basically, yeah, grabbed that screwdriver and stuck it in the propagandist sliver again. And I think they declared him. They're searching for him criminally now, right? There's a warrant for him. Yeah, they started the criminal prosecution. There is warrant for his arrest. Well, okay, Lindsay, you cannot rest on Crimean beaches until we deoccupy that. He is actually a conservative Republican that is presenting a very authoritative, high authority wing of Republican Party that is more aggressive in supporting Ukraine, even to a much higher degree than Biden's administration. So do you think this may affect the position of Republican Party as well? Of course, all these games, they do have certain reflection in the American politics, right? And in Democrat side, they have one kind of electors votes. On the Republican side, they have a different one. And one cannot say that Republicans are not interested in international politics. They do. They are. They remember Cold War, and they remember their Cold War and conflicts with Soviet Union. And there is a branch of Republican Party that actually likes having some evil foes out there that they can struggle with, and they know how to. So, given the Republicans' possible win at the election, I do not see support of Ukraine waning, because there is no scenario when Putin will continue shelling Kiev and then Republican Party will come out and say, no, we're not going to do anything. Let them kill women and children, and we will not do a thing. There is no world when that is a truth. So, in return, I think there's actually a program with our pilots training, so sooner or later we'll get the jets, and its calendar is less important. What's more important is the broken seal that jets will be coming to Ukraine to support us, and the West will continue fighting against Russia, trying to use gray schemes to build more missiles or Shahid UAVs. And in response to that, there'll be more financial and military support until Kremlin loses. This question is settled. They are fighting this war, supporting us to fight this war until Kremlin loses. And regardless who comes to power, for example, Republican President DeSantis, or they get Republican supermajority in both Senate and Congress, it still will not change the stance on Ukraine, because the usual rhetoric in election cycle, when you run against the party in power, everything that you run against is bad. Everything they are doing is bad. So they are attacking the behavior of Democrats and the war. And if you change the positions and imagine there would be Republicans in power, then the Democrats would be complaining about the same stuff. They would be just changing roles, and Democrats would be screaming about wasting money here. But the way I see it is that support to Ukraine will only grow, and Borrell in Europe also made a statement today that Putin will likely not try negotiating without trying to win this war again, and we need to, for now, continue increasing our military support to Ukraine. So they're very sober in evaluating the risks and possibilities, so I see the support is only growing. All right, so we've been about 44 minutes live. We're concluding our poll. 40,000, 45,000 almost voted. If Ukrainian military will use the chance to liberate Bakhmut and enter the city again, when Wagner will leave it. 38% think it's insignificant. Yes, 45%. So they're winning in this regard. We had 86,000 likes on my channel, about 250,000 watching us today. I continue asking you to please click the like button before the end of the stream. It is important, so more people can take a look. I understand sometimes we go live in unusual times, but it is important for us that you continue supporting us and being with us, even when we do it in a different time. And of course, subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. And we'll see you on Wednesday at 10 p.m. Kiev time, Moscow time, and we'll see you a day after tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll have a few other streams, and I'll have guests discussing possibility of nuclear conflict on the territory of Belarus. Olexiy, thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you. Goodbye.